Good afternoon. Welcome to our Business Agility video podcast. So each week we spend 30 minutes exploring business technology topics for small business owners in Canada. So our topic today is business analytics. And of course, we can spend all day talking about this topic, but we're going to limit it to 30 minutes today. We're excited to be joined by Dean McKeown, who's an associate director of a new management analytics program at Queen's University. So Dean has a unique perspective where he works with the brightest students and most innovative companies in Canada and across the world regarding business analytics. So we'll share some of his stories and insights into some of the people and these companies. Our format today, as always, is interactive, and we invite questions from both our webinar attendees live and our Facebook live stream. So we'll kick it off with some panelist intros and then get right into our topic. So with that, I'll turn it back to Samantha to kick things off.
Mute.
Oh, you're mute.
Always do that when I'm setting that Zoom up on the live stream on Facebook. Yep, my name is Samantha Knighton-DeForge. I work with Accurus as a business solutions specialist. I finished a double major in information systems and business administration at Trent University, which is kind of a little bit of a sister school to Queen's a little bit, to say the least. And yeah, like Murray mentioned, we're very excited to have Dean on board to talk about some analytics. So with all due respect, Dean, you're next. Give yourself a little introduction and who you are and go from there.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks a lot, Samantha. Yeah. So my name is Dean McKeown. I am the Associate Director of the Global Master of Management Analytics program at Smith School of Business at Queen's University. A nice big long title there for you. I'm very happy to be here. So thanks a lot for the invitation and the opportunity because, you know, the world has changed dramatically, and I truly believe that we can only build a better world through digital transformation, and that involves analytics and artificial intelligence, all that kind of fun. It's fun stuff. So I'm glad to be here to talk about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Swenson. As everyone might have seen me from the previous weeks, I've been implementing ERP systems and assisting with reporting and efficiency improvement from mid-market companies for about 25 years now, and I'm a senior business consultant with Accurus Solutions.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Murray Quibell. I'm the president of Accurus Solutions. My background, I'm a chartered accountant with a specialization in IT, so a CPA. My passion, I have a direct passion. It almost comes from being a sports fan, but a direct passion in analytics. And I love what we're doing in sports such as Major League Baseball and National Hockey League around how analytics can affect everything from player development to roster construction to in-game decisions and in-game strategies. And so what we want to do as a company, and we're just love kind of sharing some ideas with Dean, is bringing that to business. So bringing it to small and mid-sized business in Canada. So that's kind of where our passion is and where we want to kind of spend a little bit of our discussions today. So I'll turn it back to you, Samantha, to kind of kick off some topic areas and get going here.
Well, I think what we want to definitely cover off first is, we have Dean joining us here. And the introduction that I actually had with Dean was the Global Master of Management Analytics that the Smith School of Business offers. And I think it'd be great to have Dean, start with, and obviously it piqued my interest, because yes, we love analytics so much. But why don't you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of that program, Dean, and what it offers, and what kind of people you work with?
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess I'll go back to talk about Smith School of Business. So inside the school, we actually have what we call an analytics and AI ecosystem. And inside that ecosystem, we have research centers who are actually doing, research, both theoretical research, but also applied research in analytics. And we do that. We work with a lot of different companies in that field. We also have academic programs, so a PhD, MSc, and we have a Toronto-based Masters of Management Analytics program, a Masters of Management Artificial Intelligence program, and a Masters of Finance and Innovation and Technology program, and my program, which is the Global Master of Management Analytics program. Basically what happened 8 years ago, we were listening to industry leaders and saying, like, there's a huge gap. We've got some really tremendous technology people. We've got some really tremendous business people. but they don't talk to each other, right? There's this huge gap, this a gully really between the technology folks and the business folks. And so that was a problem that they had. And so around the same time, McKinsey did a big report, and they said, you know, the world is looking for what they call translators. And I think, you know, that was a part or a world that evolved, you know, out of many, many years, decades, in fact, of how companies and corporations grew, right? They're always very pillarized, right? You had your finance group, you had your accounting group, you had your supply group, and you had your manufacturing sales groups, and you had your IT groups. And so all of a sudden, you know, IT became sort of big and somewhat monolithic. And so the business side was going, hey, you know what? We need to move faster on this. This is technology. We need to gather the data. We need to know what's going on. And so I think there was a thing called shadow IT that started growing up very quickly. And that, again, created different problems. And that led to disparity in data sets and who had what data when and where. And so basically, you know, the emergence of what we'll call management analytics is really this idea of the business people identifying business problems, the IT people providing data, and all of a sudden you made these things work much easier, right? The business people had access to the data. IT was able to keep it secure, and you know, then vice versa. And it's still a struggle. I'm not going to, you know, there's no doubt there's still that gully is there. But our analytics programs are business programs, but they deal with technology, so they help bridge these people. And our Toronto program has been growing exponentially. The problem with the Toronto program is you have to be in Toronto. And so there's classes every single week that you have to be there. And so since we created Toronto, we've been saying we have to be able to get this program out to the world, and certainly across Canada. And so this is why we came up with this kind of interesting format where we have students come to us for residential sessions, but then we also have online learning. And so it's a nice blend where people can literally be anywhere in the world and be able to take our program and learn about our analytics and stuff. So, you know, that's one of the great things is in the current class, we have students who are literally from across Canada and also in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and places like that. So it's pretty exciting to be able to bring everybody together under the Smith sort of umbrella and talk about analytics.
And I think, you know, you make a really great point, and and I think it's right. You talk about, you know, those hybrid people, the people that are required, and bridging that gap between IT and business operations. And we start seeing this, right? We're seeing this a lot more in the market. And like you said, we're not quite there yet. There's a lot of people who, you know, and you mentioned as well, you know, business owners will go and call a boardroom meeting, and 5 different people will show up with 5 different data sets. So if we're getting right into the meat and potatoes of the foundation of analytics, I know you mentioned there's a couple of steps, you know, each business owner has to do in a sequential order to get there. So why don't we talk a little bit about, you know, what do you visualize those steps to be for a business to make analytics come to life for any company, and why every company needs them, even small or mid-sized?
Yeah, for sure. And so what I would say right from the start is you park the technology. Forget about technology for a second and think about the business itself. And it's really a visioning document or a visioning part in building out your strategy. And you sort of have to ask yourself, you know, what does my company look like today? And where do I want my company to go to tomorrow, right? And so those are those 2 foundational strategic pieces that you have to understand. And then when you sort of get that strategy developed, then you have to start thinking more about tactics and understand what's out there, right? And what's going on with my business, and what do I need to do to achieve those goals? So again, not a technology question at all, but a business question. Being able to understand, you know, who your market is, who your customers are, what kind of products do you offer, how can you manufacture those products, how do you support your supply chain, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, and that's another big shift that we're seeing in business today, right? Is traditionally, I would have said companies had accountants, sort of like Murray, right? The CPA, where you're sitting there and you have the accountants following the money, and you can figure out, you know, where the money's going. And, you know, you get a pretty good snapshot of what your business is doing. The problem is that money can be or actually value is a little bit different, right? And so it's not necessarily money. So if you can actually sort of economize what you're doing and build out certain efficiencies in your organization, then you can actually save a lot of money, right? By buying more of a raw material, or reaching out to your customers through digital means instead of print. There's money to be saved there. So it's the business value that is still important. So that's the kind of stuff where you can start thinking about leveraging data and the digital strategy piece, and being able to look at what's going on in your organization, being able to quantify it, and then run it through some models and stuff to make sure it's going. So we know that companies can be very, very successful once they start leveraging data. And again, to get that snapshot of what your business is doing, and use some predictive modeling to be able to, get your company to where it actually wants to be. And then part of that is also digital transformation. So today, right, we have tremendous computing power. We have tremendous abilities of gathering data. Sometimes you can buy it through third parties. Sometimes you can collect it yourself. And basically, you have to be able to do things a little bit differently this way. You have to think about, intuition still is very, very important. But once you have some intuition, then you can actually develop a hypothesis. Then you can figure out what kind of data you need to gather, and then you can analyze that. And then through that, three-step process, then you can actually derive insights that you can then make business decisions based on. And, the other thing is too, the next steps is, when you got the data and you figure out what kind of data you actually have to collect and how you're going to store it, then you can start thinking about the technology piece. What am I going to do with the data? How are we going to analyze this, and how are we going to build it? And that's another thing that's really interesting, because the emergence of cloud computing has actually made that a lot easier for people. You no longer have to have a full stack developers and stuff to get your IT system up and running. You can use some cloud computing to make it a little bit more inexpensive and be able to build a system very, very quickly. So, those are the kind of the processes you have to think about, right from the strategy to the actual implementation and the tactics of it.
And yeah, and I think, I know that when we talk to our, customer base, they've seen the value of analytics. They've seen the value of having dashboards and information available to them that comes to them, and then instead of them having to go search for it. So we definitely see that. But I think oftentimes, when we're working with companies who, let's say, aren't running anything consolidated, they don't have really great analytics, everyone's got different data sheets. I think a lot of people, when they think analytics, they think, the movie Hackers, they think all these crypto different coding and all this computer mumbo jumbo, and kind of like the background you have there on your screen there, Dean. But, I think it's something that does need to be demystified. I mean, analytics can be anything as seeing a dashboard with an accounts receivable status to, yes, predictive and cognitive analytics using machine learning to make decisions based on analytics that you already have in place. I think there's a variety of different levels that you've just spoken to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And every type, so when we're in the program itself, we talk about there's 4 different types of analytics, and we discuss them all, and they're all equally important. They all provide a certain function. And like you mentioned, the dashboard idea, right? So that's what we call descriptive analytics, where, you can just talk about, how many customers did I have today, right? And then how much money did each customer spend? And so that kind of stuff, when you can build the dashboard and what we call business intelligence, and you can see that in real time today, and be able to figure out what's going on. The problem with descriptive analytics is that you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So that's great, we did this today, but what's going to happen tomorrow? And that's where we get into what we call predictive modeling or predictive analytics. And so you can use the data from yesterday and today to build out a model of what's going to happen tomorrow. The problem with that, because there's always something going on, the problem with predictive analytics is that there's a whole bunch of unknowns, right? There's a variable can get in there and mess things up. Let's just look at the virus that's going around the world right now. I would argue that most predictive models need to be replaced. And the challenge there, of course, is that the data sets that those models were built on are also completely out of date. So we're going to have to rethink, what kind of data we've been collecting and how to make decisions going forward with that data, because no one could foresee a pandemic like the one that we're in right now. And so the next type of analytics that we want to talk about is what we call prescriptive analytics. And prescriptive analytics is really about optimization, being able to figure out not only what your models are doing, but where you want to be. And then what can you do operationally today to make sure that your models are successful? And so one of the best examples that I always use here is like dynamic pricing in the airline industry, right? As soon as you get onto an airplane, you have no idea how much that person sitting beside you paid for that ticket, right? And some people would pay a lot more, some people will pay a lot less. And airlines are really kind of interesting. So it's airlines and hotels and stuff. They've been doing this for decades, but they've got tons of data, right? They know about the fixed costs of an airplane taking off, let's say flying from Calgary to Toronto. They know the cost. They know the costs of the people, the airplane, the maintenance. They know the fuel costs, all that kind of stuff. And they know how many seats are on that plane. So what they can do is like your traditional economics, right? They look at the supply and the demand, and then they can fluctuate the price of each seat according to that supply and demand. So when supply is high, you lower the price, then demand comes back up, and it keeps on going like this. And so that's why you see fluctuating prices for each seat on an airplane. The thing you want to think about though is as soon as that airplane takes off, for every empty seat or seats not sold, that is revenue that's missed out from that organization. And so you want to be able to make sure that even if you have to sell that last seat for $5, that's $5 more revenue than you would have had if you didn't sell that seat. And so if you want to maximize or optimize your revenues for your organization, you have to know what the prices are for that plane ticket and how do you actually fill every single seat or at least sell every ticket on that plane. And that's where data comes into play. And every time that plane takes off, you're getting more data. You're getting more understanding of customer behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And that is huge for any kind of organization that wants to be able to, you just think about, you have some kind of a product. If you can buy that product and, you usually get a lower price per unit if you buy more units. And so if you know that you've got a customer base that's interested in that, and you go out and buy bulk and you're pretty confident that you can sell because you've been gathering the data of your customers, then you can actually make a lot more money that way. And your business can be a lot more profitable. And then the other part of it too, when you're looking at dynamic pricing in the airline tickets, for example, you can't have people making those price changes for you, right? You need to be able to change those prices immediately. And that's where artificial intelligence and machine learning can come into play. You can actually build a system that can analyze all the customer data, like all the sales, for instance, sales versus inventory. You can develop a system that monitors that in real time and adjusts the price in real time as well. And so that, I think, is where most organizations want to get to that point where, they can let a computer system do it for them and not have to worry about it. But this is the other part you have to really think about is the ethical considerations of that. You don't want a computer system making decisions for you that are the wrong decisions or that put you at risk. And so you have to think about risk management and data governance and all this kind of stuff before you implement that kind of a system. So that's the big challenge, I think, for most organizations is to front load the data governance piece and then start thinking about making automatic decisions later on.
Dean, that's thanks for, I like the 6-step approach that you first talked about, and then the kind of the 4 levels of business analytics. Maybe just when we think about the levels of business analytics, can you just talk to where do we think companies are at in Canada? So when we think about small, mid-sized companies, in my experience, some of them struggle even just to get to phase 1 on the descriptive analytics. But maybe just share some your thoughts of where companies are currently, and maybe a couple of strategies that they may be able to kind of move towards, first of all, in the descriptive analytics, but then also move up the chain, ultimately getting more to the cognitive. But maybe just share some thoughts of where it's currently at and how companies may be able to kind of move along that.
Yeah, for sure. And this is really, it's a global thing. It's not just in Canada, but and there seems to be some pretty good trends around this as well. But most organizations are pretty low, actually. It's like maybe, you know, 70% of most companies really don't do much in the way of analytics.
Okay.
They haven't been able to really capture the power of analytics to make it push forward. And so, you know, companies have been running very successfully on intuition, right? That's the bottom line, is that, you know, they've had these great business leaders, they know what they're doing, and they push forward and they say, yeah, this is the right decision for us. The problem is you don't really know it's the wrong decision until it's a bit too late. So that's why I'm kind of pushing, you know, the digital transformation piece and being able to think about, you know, not only your intuition, but back it up with data. But gathering data is very, very challenging, right? And so in gathering the right kind of data, and we're still at a phase now where, you know, if a lot of our students in their workplaces, they still spend 80, 85, sometimes 90% of their time just cleaning up the data, right? Figuring out what data sets to connect and cleaning it up. And that's what we've been watching, you know, that a few years ago, the role of the data scientist was considered to be the sexiest job of the century or some crazy thing like that. And so you had these people, literally brilliant minds, who consider themselves data scientists, often with PhDs and stuff, and they'd get put into a role and they think that they'd be building models and algorithms and all this kind of funky stuff, but really they end up spending all their time cleaning data. And that's not what they want, right? That's absolutely not what
Might as well scrape a cheese grater against your forehead for 8 hours a day.
Exactly.
I know for us, that's exactly what we see out there too. And a lot of companies, they try to get by on, you know, say entry level systems, you know, maybe QuickBooks and stuff like that, which works perfect if you're a small, really small company. But as you kind of move up beyond that, what we see is a lot of spreadsheets, and then that's where all of a sudden the data cleanup gets crazy. And the benefits that we see is that you know, the enterprise resource planning software or ERP software isn't just for the enterprise, you know, companies that are using, you know, large systems like SAP, but we can bring that to the mid-market with some of the, I think you mentioned some of the newer cloud technologies. And that's certainly where we're all about, is just being able to start with a, you know, a system that has structured data and that avoids a lot of the data cleanup issues. Of course, it's not you don't just drop it in. You have to then kind of make sure that you have the strategies that you mentioned, starting with, you know, what's our business and what kind of data do we want to report on? Hey?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, that's it. And now, I mean, like I said, the computer processing power is happening. So we're seeing a lot of different tools are being built to help people do this. But quite often, you know, it's faster to sort of throw it all out and start again than it is to sort of clean up what's going on. And then you get into things like mergers and acquisitions where you're trying to bring disparate data sets together. And that just becomes another huge headache. But on the flip side of that, again, technology is coming along. And so people are developing software that can help this, you know, and help data match and all that kind of stuff. So it's not doom and gloom here. It's there's a lot of opportunity, but it's, you know, slow and it's expensive. And people say, you know, do I need to spend this money? Well, you know what, you got to think long term. It's an investment. So
if your company, if you're looking to grow and get into new markets or sell more product, and most companies are looking for growth in some ways, then they should be thinking that way. And it's not too many companies that are just satisfied with the status quo, and if so, then you don't need to worry about it. But the ones we like to work with are those innovative companies. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but Dean, but maybe just a couple of thoughts that I would have is just maybe share some of the stories of some of the people that you work with, and you know, where their background is, and how your program has maybe helped them into, say, a new role or a new opportunity, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's quite a few people who have, you know, decided to sort of pivot in their career. So we've had, you know, accountants and engineers and stuff who, you know, come from a very quant background, which is great. And so they've got that sort of foundational piece, but they just kind of see, you know what, I don't know if I want to actually, you know, continue on with just accounting or just, you know, whatever kind of engineering and stuff. And so they can leverage, you know, our program to be able to sort of pivot into a different role. Quite often people will stay in the same industry, but just, you know, get into that different, you know, we're no longer the engineer on the oil well, and they can pull it into the main office and start doing some, you know, things like maintenance schedules of wells and stuff like that. So where their subject matter experts still exists. And so if you think about, and it's, we've had quite a few of our students have gone off into these like very highly digital companies as well. I don't know, in Ontario anyway, Wayfair is a really big company, and we get lots and lots of advertisements on, from Wayfair. And so we've had a couple of our students have gone on to there, and that's always kind of fun because then you get to go to Boston instead of just Toronto and this kind of stuff. And so you get the sort of that international flair as well. And these are companies that, put a lot of emphasis on data and understanding what their customers are and understanding pricing. And so you can really leverage what's going on with all your analytics knowledge, right? And so, and that's another thing too, in our program, we do touch on all the different types of analytics or the business areas. So finance, supply chain, marketing, all those sorts of things where you can see you can really see the data and feel the data and work with the data. But the secret there, again, is understanding of the data from all of them and bringing them all together. Right? When you think about from a business perspective, how can you actually price a product without knowing the supply chain of that product, right? Or knowing the costs of marketing that product and the sales prices and stuff. And so this is where the secret to all this stuff is all about collaboration. And I would argue, the students that we've had in the program who are the most successful, who have actually seen, 4 or 5 big promotions in the past, couple of years, it's all about this collaboration piece and being able to be creatively thinking about, what kind of data can I pull in to help support this argument. And so, we've had, I'm just trying to think now, quick count on my head, there's over 1,000 analytics graduates from Smith over the past 8 years that we've been running this program. And so we've seen people who have, very happily gone out and become, private consultants or working for large consulting firms or into retail industry and finance. Finance is always about 36% of our student body. And so the big banks in Canada have definitely embraced analytics to the 9th degree. It's really quite phenomenal to see their growth in this area as well. One sort of interesting story that we can talk about, or I'll just bring up, is that using credit ratings for people applying for consumer loans. So one of the organizations that we worked with, they wanted to offer small business loans out to people in Central and South America. And of course, in those areas, they don't have traditional credit. They don't have a banking population. And so what they did is we actually ran a study comparing the 2 different types of credit analysis. So one is the traditional one where you look at their credit history and look at credit cards and that kind of stuff. And the other one was where you do a social media scrape and you take a look at that. And what research found is that it was exactly the same veracity between the 2 types. And we were able to do the social media scrape in seconds, whereas a traditional credit check would take days. And so when you think about being able to support your customers very, very quickly based on digital, it makes a huge difference, and it creates a better rapport between you and your customer as well. So by knowing what your customers' needs are and by making sure that you can meet those needs, it makes a big difference. And that's where digital comes into play.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I guess the one thing that we got a minute left here too is I think what I really want to demystify as a closing thought is we know that enterprise level customers use analytics. We know sports uses analytics. We know we've seen it in movies and things like that. And like you mentioned, like how are you supposed to, as a business owner, be able to make a decision and buy product if you don't even know what to sell it for or anything like that? Is not understanding the full supply chain. It's like, those NFL drafts or, those football virtual leagues or whatever, right? If you didn't have the statistics or the data behind it, how would you pick the player? Right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, but I guess what would be your closing thought for the small and mid-market businesses? Do you think that there is value in people exploring this option? Do you think it's overkill? What are your closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. And the sports part is a great one because, the digital transformation, you wouldn't have thought that, any sports or professional sports would lend itself really well to the digital and the data. But what, if you think back to like the movies like Moneyball and that sort of thing, What those people were able to do is leverage analytics to figure out what wasn't there, right? What are the missing skill sets of the players on the team? Looking at the team holistically, identifying the holes, and then they were able to bring in players to fill those holes at a good price, right? Because those players that they brought in were very niche. And so that's a great way of doing it. It's a great way of looking at analytics because, you know, traditionally any kind of organization, you know, you look at what you've got and you understand your current customers and that sort of thing. So you can see that. But analytics can actually provide you with some insights to understand what you can't see. And what you can't see, that's where opportunity lies, right? And so you can do this and you can go seek those opportunities using data and analytics. And on the flip side of that, though, is risk, right? And you can use data and analytics to understand risk a lot better as well and be able to make those decisions. So an organization that utilizes data can not only find the opportunities, but also find the risks that are associated with that. And then they can make better business decisions going forward.
Yeah, you bet. Well, it looks like our time is up, everyone. So Dean, thank you so much for taking the time to spend 30 minutes with us today. Just to recap, Dean does work with the Smith School of Business at Queen's University and is the Associate Director for the Global Master of Management Analytics. Really fabulous curriculum if you are looking into it, so be sure to check it out. But thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you sometime soon in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks.
Thanks.